Hello, welcome to another episode of the Dans. You've got two beleaguered Dans here who have been working late at night. Last night, the House wrapped up about 1 in the morning. The committees got going this morning about 8 or 9. So everyone's starting to get a little bit worn out, a little more testy at the Roundhouse. But we're heading into sort of a really critical 2 weeks here. There's a lot of legislation kind of hitting key committees. Each chamber is passing bills back and forth. A few have made their way to the governor. But Dan, tell me a little bit about where you see things stand, where things stand now, and kind of what you're looking for in the next few days.
Yeah, there's still a lot of high-profile bills to be resolved. You know, the governor did sign this week another pandemic relief measure, actually two different bills. So we have had resolution on a few bills, kind of providing financial aid to businesses and to workers. But by and large, a lot of the big ticket legislation is still in play, still in limbo here, including cannabis bills. You know, we're expecting in the coming days to see if they can kind of craft a compromise out of a few different competing bills on that. Also, a proposal to kind of tap the state's biggest permanent fund for early childhood education. That advanced out of its first Senate committee today, a big step forward, but still has a few more hurdles. So we're going to start seeing these bills. Still plenty of time. 2 weeks is a lot at the legislature, but also a little more sense of urgency, and seeing some bills starting to fall by the wayside that probably aren't going to be in that final mix.
Yeah, the proposal to withdraw more money from the permanent fund for early childhood, that has made it, I think it's just about as far as it's ever been at this point. And with the sort of the new composition of the Senate, we'll see if they make any changes, but it's pretty far along at this point. Another big one that's getting a lot of attention is the cannabis legislation. There are a variety of bills, competing bills that have different components. Do you see any of that getting worked out? What's sort of the next key step for sorting through some of this marijuana legalization stuff?
Yeah, so there's still one bill that the House has approved, and then several Senate bills that have been proposed. They're all in the same committee, the Senate Tax Committee. We had thought that committee was going to take those bills up tomorrow, but it sounds like they're going to wait actually a few more days until maybe kind of early next week, while kind of the sponsors try to work out a compromise in the background. And I think it's too early to tell whether that's going to happen or not. Certainly if they can't agree, I think that improves the odds of a bill getting through the Senate and ultimately making it to the governor's desk. If not, then there could be competing proposals moving forward, and certainly a chance that none of them win final approval.
Yeah, we're seeing there are a few of sort of these big progressive priorities, like the early childhood amendment, the marijuana legalization bill. There's also some medical malpractice legislation. All have cleared the House and now are sort of in the Senate, where they're maybe being revised, and sort of their fate might be determined. Obviously, I wouldn't rule out that they get passed without any changes also, but it seems like we've really hit a critical point in the session where there are kind of these little choke points where to reach the Senate floor, you have to go through a bunch of committees. I know one committee in particular has been has had a really heavy workload. What do you see happening with Senate Judiciary, Dan? Is there some chance that they'll start clearing some of these bills?
We saw a little frustration kind of bubble over on the Senate floor this week about that committee, Senate Judiciary. One senator said there's 100 bills currently kind of backlog in that committee alone. And it's not unusual. That committee usually gets a lot of bills referred to it, and they do study the legal parts of the bill. But also some senators expressing frustration that their bills haven't yet been brought up and have been sitting there for a while. So there is going to be, probably not time to hear all those bills, but certainly the committee can crank through a number of them. The next week will be pivotal in seeing which one of those bills do advance and which ones are scheduled. Of course, a lot of those discussions kind of happening per usual, kind of behind closed doors, but always keep in mind, things can move really fast in these final weeks of a session. So just because a bill has been parked there for a while doesn't mean that it's dead. But certainly people starting to get a little anxious. trying to get their bills moving. And we're getting a lot of appeals from people to try to write about certain bills, to bring attention to them, and a lot of worthy causes in a limited amount of time.
Yeah, in contrast to, say, a city council or a county commission, time really becomes an enemy of legislation late in a legislative session like this, because each chamber has to pass identical bills or identical versions of a bill to get it to the governor. And if it doesn't happen by noon, March 20th, then they have to start all over. So we'll see how some of this worked out. I know the two chambers seem to kind of have this broader difference in culture, but the pace seems to have been a little different. I feel like I've heard more from the senators a little bit about the difficulty of working online and getting things done. Whereas it seems like the House is, the virtual format is not slowing them down at all, and they're passing a bunch of bills and waiting for Senate action. So we'll see how that turns out. But what else are you looking for, Dan? I mean, these are the last 2 weeks where pretty much everything is going to get decided. That any other thoughts you want to touch on before?
Yeah, I think another interesting thing just to mention, there's a lot of concern early in the session about the coronavirus, and actually we went about a month with daily testing without having any positive cases at the Capitol, which was a positive development. There was one positive case this week of the person's identity hasn't been revealed, but coming up on a year now, anniversary since the pandemic started, and just to see how drastically the legislature has changed, and our job covering the legislature has changed. Certainly still covering the committee meetings like we would be, and important issues like would be debated anyhow, but just kind of struck me this week how much our lives have changed. It'll be interesting to see how many of these changes will be kind of the new normal going forward, or how much it'll just be kind of a unique session we're going through.
Yeah, I've been getting to know the testing people really well. I see them about as often as I see anybody else in person, going to get my my nasal swab every 5 days. They were a little disappointed that Dan Boyd chose this week to write about our streak of no positives, because as soon as he started asking around about it, we had a positive case pop up. But it was a pretty remarkable run. There's been, there were kind of the intake positives, and then, since then there was a long streak of no one getting sick, which is really good news. Well, as always, we're thankful for anyone who subscribes to the paper, clicks on our story. We know it's a privilege to be one of the few people in the building, and we take seriously that responsibility to be your eyes and ears to the extent we can inside the Capitol. But Dan, I'll let you have the closing. Anything else you want to share as
It's going to be a busy last 2 weeks, kind of sprint to the finish. I know Dan McKay, you've kind of got the short end of the stick so far with the late House floor sessions. I'm sure the Senate will be having some later evenings of its own. So certainly we'll be doing our best to kind of keep up with that, and hopefully getting a little sleep on the side, over these coming 15 days.